Hey, I had so much fun doing that experiment with the forget the best glide speed, just trim full nose up and see what happens. And we found out that it didn't really happen. It argued with the Autopilot, the Garmin ESP. So today we're going to explore ESP in the Garmin GFC 500 Autopilot. So stick with us on FlyWire. Hey, I'm Scott Perdue, and today on FlyWire we're going to explore the Garmin Enhanced Stability and Protection Program, which is a trademark, if I can say it. Anyway, we're going to explore its limits and see how it acts, so we can maybe use that as a reference for other things, you know. There's a lot of misunderstanding in that video I shot about what the Autopilot is and what it's doing. So as long as it has power to it, it's got this ESP program running in the background where it's monitoring your speeds and stuff. So it's got underspeed protection, it's got overspeed protection, it's got auto level feature, and it's got bank protection. We're going to explore all of those by doing roll and see what happens, unusual attitudes. We'll do some pitch maneuvers and some stalls and see what the thing is. And we're trying to figure out what the limits are and how it engages, what it progresses in doing. And realize the Autopilot engage limits in the airplane are plus or minus 50 degrees of pitch, plus or minus 75 degrees in roll. So we're going to play with those a little bit today. So what it's going to do is, and we saw that in the video, is that if ESP is engaged for more than 10 seconds, it's going to engage the Autopilot completely, okay? Otherwise, it's just going to send commands to the roll servos if it's a roll event, or to the pitch servos if it's a pitch event, okay? So it's got a max speed where it's going to pitch up, and oh, by the way, that's 198 knots, and you know, I'm not going to try that. I'm not going to try that. I think if it was something a bit lower, perhaps I'd flirt with that, but 198 knots, yeah, no. But the low airspeed we're going to play with, that's less than 70 knots, and the roll is 45 degrees. I do that all the time, so it's kind of a problem. You can select it off, and it'll turn itself back on again, or you can disconnect it and hold the disconnect button in, and that will disengage it from engaging and send it issuing commands, but it's kind of distracting to hold that down. So when I installed this Autopilot, because this is an aerobatic airplane, I put an on-off switch to where I could just turn off the Autopilot completely. And when I do aerobatics, that's what I do. But that ain't what we're doing today. We're going to try this out. So the first thing we want to do is I'll take you for a quick tour of the dash, what the indicators are on the Autopilot. As you can see over here, right now I'm navving to my waypoint. I've got Autopilot engaged, I've got the flight director engaged, and a yaw damper. This blue button is the level button, and that's when, you know, if you're confused or something, unusual attitude, you can punch that. As long as within limits, it'll recover the airplane to level flight. And I'm doing altitude hold. Okay, I have descent. This selects altitude. It's got an altitude pre-select, which is, I love this thing. It's got a heading here, and this is my climb and descent modes. I can climb using indicated airspeed, use this thumb wheel to adjust that airspeed. It will capture, when I hit the button, it'll capture the airspeed I'm at. If that's not what I want, I can adjust it with this thumb wheel. VNav, I can connect it with flight plan altitudes, and it'll intercept those. It's a little bit harder to work. It's wonderful in a great big airplane that's flying high altitude and you're doing step down arrivals and stuff. The VNav is fantastic. I hate to say it, I really haven't found an awful lot of usefulness in my Bonanza. Anyway, don't do stars very much. The vertical speed is another where you can set the actual vertical speed you're going to climb or descend. So how I work this is, if I'm climbing, I do indicated airspeed. Because if I do vertical speed, the airplane, the Autopilot will try to do vertical speed, and it will eventually stall the airplane or get close to it when ESP activates. So it's kind of kludgy. Conversely, the airplane's pretty slick, so if I try to do indicated airspeed on the descent, it's going to end up doing this porpoise routine. That's not much fun either. So what I do is vertical speed on descents, indicated airspeed in climbs. Okay, so that's how that works there. Let's go around the G3X indicator. So these magenta bars are my flight director, and I can use there. You can select this. You can do a couple of, or at least one other version. I don't like it, the V bars. I never liked the V bars. I like the horizontal bars. And one's for pitch and one's for roll. So the little dot, there's a little yellow dot underneath the cross mark there, and that is basically the nose of the airplane. The wings are these little handles, if you will, going out to the sides, so we can watch that. This is the pitch ladder. It's kind of like a HUD in a way, but this is all synthetic. And then roll. Okay, so little markers there for the little green triangles right now show us the standard rate turn. Once we start turning, we're going to see what the limits are. There are two double bars, green bars, that show you what the roll limit is. So we'll see that. Altitude, this is current altitude. That's what the altitude is set for. This is vertical velocity. This is your airspeed, true airspeed, and then ground speed over here. The HSI is pretty much self-explanatory. Pretty good winds today across. So what these green things are telling me is autopilot, yaw damper. For green, they're engaged. GPS is the nav source. It's an altitude hold at 5,500 feet. And when it's white, it's armed, and then it'll flash green, bright green, and then when it's green, it's engaged. If it's yellow, then there's a problem, and it'll show you red X's if it's not working at all. So that's the tour around that. So if you want to know if the autopilot's working, and I don't have the controller in the camera, look on the attitude indicator and that little green bar right up here, and it'll tell you what's working, what isn't. Okay. So with that being said, I'm going to disconnect the autopilot. Okay. When the autopilot's engaged, because I have electric trim, the electric trim will activate. It will trim out any forces that are on the pitch servo. Okay, which is cool. That's leaves you a real well-trimmed airplane. If you don't know how to trim, you can use that feature. So the first thing I want to do is now with the autopilot disengaged, it's got these little green bars that'll show us what the roll limits are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to exceed those limits. There's the roll. See, they turn yellow, and it starts to roll me back inside those limits. Boom, and then it gives it back to me. It's the autopilot roll is disengaged. We'll try it again to the other side real quick. Pitch up a little bit. There it goes, and it's going to pitch us down and roll us back to within limits. And it's a little dynamic. As you can see, it went to 30 the first time, and the second time it went to about 35. Okay, so that is that's the roll, but a real common, a real easy deal there. All right. So what I want to do is I want to flirt with pitch and roll. All right. So unusual attitudes. I want to flirt with 50 degrees is pretty high. And it's pitching me down right now. It's 25 degrees. It shows me those yellow arrows, and it's pitching it down to below that. All right, so let's see what happens. All right, now the little arrows, it's leveling me out. Okay, and it's kind of hanging us there at 10. It's gonna give up there. It's not gonna do anything else, but it's gonna keep us within a certain pitch and roll limit. Okay, so pitch is plus 20 degrees, minus 15 degrees, and roll is 45 degrees. There we go. So let's do basically an unusual attitude situation like this, and it's pitching me down. I'm going to hit the level button, and it takes over, levels me out, and then we'll engage the autopilot. Okay, right now we have autopilot yaw damper in level mode, and we can see that right here. Okay, so I'm going to disconnect it again. That's the autopilot engaged. All right. There, it's fighting me. We're at 60, 70 degrees of roll. It's rolling me out. Okay, I'm going to fight it a little bit.
Engaging autopilot.
10 seconds, remember? If it's trying to do it for more than 10 seconds, it's going to engage the autopilot in level mode, and that's what it just did. Okay, so that's cool. All right, let's get back a bit more on course. We can do that. Let's do this. All right, Mineral Wells is right in front of me. So I'm going to try an engine out situation, and we're going to explore that a little bit. We're going to explore the speed and pitch. 15 degrees of pitch, right? There it goes. It's going to pitch that, and it's going to pitch us back up to 10.
Engaging autopilot.
And then it's 10 seconds again, it's going to engage the autopilot. Okay, I don't want to do that right now. What I want to do is I want to explore the absolute floor protection of 70 knots. Okay, I'm going to add a little trim here to trim off my forces. Okay, there's 80 knots. That's the gear warning horn. I can kill it. Okay, we're 75 knots. We're in a little bit of a descent. So I'm going to pitch the nose up a little bit. There's 70. And it engages in pitch. It says pitch right there. Okay. That was the stall warning. I'm going to go through this and I'm going to stall the airplane. Okay. I'm really fighting it here. I'm really fighting it.
Engaging autopilot. Airspeed.
End speed. I was really fighting it. I think I must have been putting about 30 pounds of force on it or something, maybe more. So that's pretty interesting. Cool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll to 70-ish degrees of bank, and then I'm going to hit the level button. So I got my finger over here for the level button. Here we go. 70-ish degrees of bank. Level. Yeah. Works like a charm. It's within limits. It works. It levels you out. Everything's good to go. So, what did we explore? Well, we did roll. We did some unusual attitudes. We approached stalls, but man, I'm telling you, stalls with this autopilot engaged, it was tough to do. It was fighting me as I'm trying to pull back. It's pitching, put pitch moment into that pitch servo, put torque on the pitch servo, and it was tough fighting it. It really was, and it was just holding us there at 70, just right above the stall. So I guess if you had SA, that this is the floor issue, then that's the problem. And in the video I did with the just trim test is it was a trim speed, calling for a trim speed lower than the floor. So it was getting in this pitch phugoid where it's trying to keep the pitch up because of the stall, but then it's above 70, so it'll put a pitch down, and the trim was setting this pitch down, so was doing a down pitch. So up, down, it couldn't decide what to do, and that wasn't much fun. Eventually, greater than 10 seconds, it engaged the autopilot and then leveled it off. That's what it did. That's what it's designed to do. So let's set 110 is our climb speed. All right. So I think we covered it all. That's Garmin enhanced stability and protection. And other than when I'm doing stuff I want to be doing, I think it's actually a really good idea. It's a good system. It works well. It's real funky. It doesn't just shut itself off when you get a really unusual attitude and you get upside down. If you're outside the limits, that plus or minus 50 pitch, plus or minus 75 roll, I've seen it still sort of work, but it does stuff where it thinks it's upright, and that's not good. So you have to have some SA about where you are when you hit it. If you're upside down, you better be flying the airplane, because it's not going to do a very good job. Okay? Well, other than that, I think it's fantastic. I really do, and I think it's a really excellent safety feature of the autopilot. I'm excited about it, and maybe we'll see more of them in the future. And a bit more capability as well. Something like that auto land thing. Of course, you need auto throttles and other stuff like that. Anyway, I digress. So, little experiment, little introduction to Garmin ESP and the Bonanza. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on FlyWire.